going to get Rose on.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a Campfire Project Live. We've got a couple of technical issues this evening, so Scott's off sorting those out in the background, and I'm running tonight's chat. We are talking about the subconscious need for validation, so this should be a nice, juicy one. I've got Michael here with me at the moment. We're going to be joined by another couple of people soon, but Michael is our resident Forging Excalibur man who turns ordinary men into knights. And I'm sure most of you in the Campfire Project are very familiar with Michael. So, welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Helen. It's awesome to be here again. I've had a little break from the Campfire Project, not intentionally. I've just been busy, so I'm looking forward to sliding back in and contributing more to these discussions in future. So that'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look, somebody's here.
Thank goodness. Scott's got his mask on, so nobody's going to catch coronavirus tonight. Thank you, Scott, for being kind and considerate and generous.
That's okay.
Turn that upside down, Scott.
Oh, hang on. I'm in Melbourne. I'm a bit upset. Here's the whole.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Okay? Because
and I forgot my mask.
Like at the minute. So, well, in life we have opportunities, don't we? We get to choose them which way we do things, right? So we can actually take that mask, turn it upside down, and I can take a choice as whether or not I want to smile. So today, I'm smiling.
And look at that. He just turned that smile upside down, didn't he?
Upside down.
Look, at the end of the day,
your face is glorious. That's one of my favorite sayings.
I don't know. I'd much rather leave the mask on, I reckon.
More than the actual cloth, I would say.
Sorry about that. No, there goes the rhythm on your first hosting. I'm sorry about that.
This is what's wonderful, right? It's about just hanging out and everybody gets
absolutely sorry. I got to go mute. All right, so here we go. So sorry, I've got to get all my tech stuff done. Rose will be with us shortly. We've just had a few tech difficulties. I'm going to sit back now and actually let Helen run the show after that. Sorry.
Is Rose coming in?
Yes, if Michael wants to give his go from the start, and then I'll just make sure this happens. Really sorry, guys. Just at the moment, tech everywhere is just, it's just interesting.
Not coping. So, Michael, would you like to give everybody a little bit of a rundown of your kind of where you're at doing the things that you're doing in relation to this topic? So, hi, Rose.
Hello, Helen.
Hi,
Hi, Michael. How are you? Hey, Scott. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Rose.
Oh, that's a better connection. That's a better connection.
Much better. I'll just introduce Rose quickly and I'll come back to you, Michael. Rose Davidson does this, and she provides administrative support to female entrepreneurs. And she also runs a really amazing community that I've read on. It's Healing Through Love, THL. It's a domestic and family violence awareness initiative, which started in Adelaide and is now in Hobart, Tasmania. That sounds amazing, Rose. So welcome. So glad to have you. And of course, we all know Scott Carson. Is there any need for any introduction for you, Scott? What do you think?
Nah, I think I'm good. I think I've made enough of a statement when I came on. So I'm sorry, Rose.
Scott,
yes, I think we'll just all say, here's our mate Scott, who we all know and love. So tonight's topic, subconscious need for validation. So deep a subject, and I find this to be very, very true. So I was just talking to Michael quickly before you popped on, Rose, to ask Michael, with all of the processes that you've got going on in your business at the moment, turning men into knights and looking back at the old way of being, how does this question really sit with you and what it is that you're putting out at the moment?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Helen, because I find that not just men, but all people, we have this need for belonging. And if we know much about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one above our physical and psychological needs is this sense of belonging that we all want. And if we don't feel that, or we don't get that via connection with others, and connection to community and people that we love, then we will seek that in certain ways. And if we can't get it in healthy ways, we subconsciously seek it in unhealthy ways, which can be any manner of behaviors that we might exhibit. And so it's a really interesting topic. I've been looking forward to talking about this because it's one of the things that I believe underlies most of the real unhealthy human behavior that we see out there. Just this subconscious need for validation, for approval, for acknowledgement, in some way, shape or form. And as I said, if we don't get it in a positive, healthy way, then we'll seek it in an unconscious, unhealthy way.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you completely, Michael. Yeah. What's your thoughts, Rose? I know we're throwing you straight in. You've just arrived, but I'm wondering what you're thinking about this.
Well, as a person who subconsciously sought validation for most of my life, yeah, I totally agree with that. I had a lot of really unhealthy behaviours as a teenager and well into my 30s. Well, yeah, up to I was about 30. So, and it was a really hard thing to break. It's a matter of getting to know yourself and to, at least getting somewhere to loving yourself, which is something that a lot of people don't do. And really it's quite a difficult journey to learn to love yourself and to even like yourself, to even get that far. It's quite a challenge for a lot of people. So yeah, I found that.
Yeah, thanks for your honesty. Scott, what do you think?
Validation is such a big part of life, and I think it's integral to growth. I'm going to talk quickly about my experience just within the Campfire Project. Most people know how I've met Alan, and I've made step by step by step. And the only reason that I've been able to belong to this community and feel like I belong to this community was the actual validation from other people within it. It's given me a strength and it's given me a home. My life has been full of different opportunities. Most people know that I was on the streets at 14. I've had many different opportunities inside my life. I never belonged anywhere. I was always just floating from place to place, and I never had any consideration as to, do I need to be validated? But then I did spend a lot of time with some different men, different opportunities, and looking back now more than ever, especially with my growth that's happening at the minute, that validation from other people is extremely important. And I think it's something that, there we go, that's our stuff. So just do that. I think all humans have a huge subconscious wanting for validation. And I think it's so important that we give it to each other so that we do grow. So,
I also, when we talk about the subconscious, our subconscious is programmed at a very, very early age. So between birth and about 7 or 8 years of age, the subconscious is programmed. And so when we talk about the subconscious need for validation, this is stuff that has existed within our subconscious mostly from childhood. And so then we've got to look back on our experience of childhood and our experience of our parents and their parenting style. And did they really know how to validate us and acknowledge us as children in a way that we may have needed? And I've got to tell you, I'm happy to share with you that most people will know that I have a 3-year-old now. And I've got 2 older kids from a previous marriage. They're now 22 and 18, but I've got a 3-year-old with my wife. And observing her and her unconscious need and desire for validation in every moment, because she's little and she wants to be loved and needed and she wants to feel all this stuff. And she's acting purely from instinct at this age, purely from instinct and the need for connection. And so I'm very conscious now of validating her and letting her know that she's loved and approved of and that she is perfect just the way that she is. Whereas when my older 2 were little, I didn't have that conscious awareness. And so I've observed that they've grown up as young adults now, still seeking approval and still seeking validation from me and from their mother and from other people in life. And my son gets some very unhealthy results in life as a result of seeking this validation because he didn't get it when he was a kid. And so when we talk about the subconscious need for validation, it all goes back to, in my estimation, it all goes back to our childhood. And did we feel loved and wanted and validated and approved of? And did we feel wanted and did we feel needed and all just for who we were instead of who our parents wanted us to be? And so I'd love to, open that up for discussion as well, because I think that all goes back to childhood.
It does. They say the first 7 years of your life are when everything is formed in your brain, basically. So your thoughts, your actions, whatever. And I know as a child, I wasn't validated. If I didn't come first in every little endeavour that I tried, I, was punished or, cast aside, and I didn't feel loved or wanted by either of my parents, really. And and everyone knows that my childhood background, so, in the campfires. So it's, no wonder I grew up the way I did. I didn't have those things when I was growing up, and I guess I was seeking them in other ways. Yeah, it's quite true.
Yeah. I've got 4 children, and I sit and often watch their look at me every time anything happens, and I remember sitting and seeing one of my kids. They were literally waiting to jump into the pool, and so they just yelled out, "Mom, look at me!" And I turned to my friend and I said, "Don't you wish you could do that?" Come on, look at me and tell me I'm great, and I love that. I love to see that energy coming from kids where they're not even shy to ask about it. They're not worried about actually saying, "I actually need you to tell me that I did that really great." And I just find that so fresh and so joyous, to see their enthusiasm to be recognized. And I laughed with one of my old bosses. He was known for not giving any praise. And so I used to walk in and say, "Hey, I just did something awesome and you're going to need to praise me." And he would just laugh and he'd go, "You're awesome." I go, "I know." And then I'd walk out and they all, "Oh my God." Because everybody used to just complain about not being recognized. And I just didn't buy into that. I just went in and said that, and it was our joke, So it's really interesting, isn't it, how there's also this kind of hidden, kind of almost underhanded shaming about needing that, about really wanting to step into being seen. And so it really is quite a deep journey when you actually get into an adult, and different things in life put you into different kind of views of being seen, and then the fear of stepping into different parts of yourself because you're not sure whether you'll be validated or not. So it leads to a whole different set of things. So I totally agree that there's this connection to childhood and the ability to be able to ask for what we want. So what do you think about that, Michael, about the actual asking for validation?
I think that's good in context. I also think that as adults, we have to get good at self-validating as well, because we can't always rely, and nor should we rely on external sources for our feelings of well-being and validation. Because I think that if we think hard enough, we can think of some pretty. We can probably all think of lots of things that we're good at, and lots of things in terms of our characteristics and our traits and attributes and virtues that we have and that we embody that are really positive. And I think that can help us to self-validate rather than seeking that externally. And because we're human beings and we seek connection, and that's a very natural thing that is almost in our DNA, it's very natural for us to seek that connection via validation from an external source, which might be a boss or a partner or a colleague or whoever it might be. And I think that in the absence of that, though, there's a danger of falling into not being able to self-validate, relying on external validation, not getting it, and then slipping into something unhealthy from a psychological point of view, which could be anxiety, depression, thoughts of I'm not good enough, self-esteem issues, etc., because not everybody's going to be conscious of validating us and approving of us and verbalizing that in the moment when we might need it or we might be seeking it. So I think just as good quality point or point of discussion is how do we self-validate? And I think that's about having some gratitude for who we are and what we've achieved and how far we've come and the personality traits that we have and all this stuff that we do that's good in the world, as opposed to what we sometimes mostly think about, which is the negative self-talk and the stuff that we don't do well, and then we beat ourselves up a little bit. I think then if we switch that and learn to really focus on the good stuff, then we can learn to self-validate from an internal perspective, and then maybe we won't need it so much from an external perspective, and then unconsciously put pressure on the people that we love and value to step into this role of the validator or the approver of us. So I think it's a multifaceted discussion in that regard. And I think a lot of it comes down to self-responsibility, knowing what our needs are, communicating our needs to the people close to us, but also understanding that because we love them and because we value them, we don't want to put the pressure on them to be, especially our partners, right, to be our lover, our confidant, our friend, our everything all in one. Yeah.
What do you think, Rose? How did you find that you were able to kind of meet that within yourself when you say you've struggled with that?
I still sometimes slip into the, if I do like something really brilliant, I will seek validation from others for the people who I've done the thing for, because it makes me feel good. And if I don't get it, as Michael said, when I've achieved the thing that I've set out to accomplish, and I don't get it, like, within a short space of time, I feel like, well, perhaps they didn't like it. Perhaps there's something wrong with it. So perhaps there's, all sorts of issues and things. And then I start to think, self-doubt myself. I start to get, start to second guess. And so I go back over the project and think, well, what can I change? What can I do? What could I have done something better? And so I agree that self-validation is quite a challenge for a lot of people. And I don't know, it's something that I guess, well, it's a learned behaviour and a learned mindset, I think. It's not something.
It's a real repetitive. It's a real repetitive habit that we have to get into, and we have to, as you're right, it's a learned behaviour, because we're programmed to seek validation externally, and it's almost an alien concept for us to say good things about ourselves within our own minds. And so it really is a learned behavior. And like the same way that the subconscious is programmed is the same way that we reprogram it by repetition. And so it's really about learning how to pick up on ourselves when we're saying these things to ourselves and doubting ourselves, picking up on that in the moment and going, actually, no, I know I did a pretty good job. And even though maybe I made a mistake, it's okay. At least I did something. And perhaps next time I can improve, or whatever it is that we need to say to ourselves in the moment.
Yeah, that's what I try to do now. And rather than beating myself up, I'm thinking, well, there's no point, because it just makes me depressed and it brings all sorts of issues. And I think, well, it's just not worth it, because, I've been so far this year, my life is just, I've been living my life in abundance, and I will not go backwards to how I was. I think the lockdown for me has been a really positive thing. So, thank you, COVID-19. So I shouldn't say that, but really, it's helped my life. It really has. I think it's saved my sanity.
So, what's changed this year for you, Rose?
I don't know. I don't know. I think think I'm just more comfortable in my own skin. I think, you know, people like Michael and yourself, Scott, and, you know, just the new people I've met, and just the work I've been doing. I've pivoted my business early this year to do something that I really love doing, rather than doing the admin work, because, you know, it was just boring and I didn't really like it. I love doing what I do now, you know, making PowerPoints and videos and stuff like that, because it's creative. Because I used to make jewelry and hats, and I used to paint and all those. So I like to be creative. So, you know, that's so what I do is a creative thing. And I mean, the project that I just did in South Australia was like a huge project. And my God, it's like, I just felt, I don't know, just so special, and work has come in, and I've got, you know, all this other stuff. Just people are coming at me left, right, and centre just this year for some reason, and I think it's because I've, you know, the universe has been kind, and I've been manifesting all this great stuff.
So, Rose, just on that, do you think then that it's easier to not need validation when you're in flow?
Yes. You don't need to. If things are happening really, you know, if your dreams are coming true and you're heading in the right direction, you're putting one foot in front of the other, baby steps, you know, not making great leaps and bounds. And, you know, as I said, good things are happening, then you don't need external validation as much. I still believe that you still need that validation from people, just to know that you're on the right track, I think. But yeah, but other, you know,
process, then really give yourself up to the process, and if you're in trust of the process, then the trust becomes inward. So yes, there's need for somebody to say, yeah, you're doing the right thing, and all that.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Can I speak into that too?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry, Rose. I thought you were finished.
No, that's all right.
Okay. So I can relate to what Rose just said, because, and very briefly, I'll share this. So when I first published the book on the 1st of May last year, it went out there and quite a few copies sold, and that was all good. And then as weeks and months went on and things started to peter off a little bit, I thought, what's happening? Like, people loved this book and now nothing's happening and I don't know what's going on. And then every time I would release, and I found myself, what I was doing then, I was releasing an online program or a course or something just to get some more interest and just to continue this, you know, this momentum that I'd started. And I look back on that, and what I was actually doing was I was seeking external validation for the fact that the book that I'd written and everything that I wanted to come after that was in some way valuable to others. And I didn't immediately get that. And I went through this little process with my coach at the time, who taught me all about stepping into faith and taught me about stepping into trust and self-belief and all this sort of stuff, right? And he took me through this process, and it's like, and that really helped me to step into what I had created on an energetic level, and also from a mental and emotional level as well. And what I mean by that is just fully investing myself and everything of me into my purpose and my mission. And then magically, and it's not really magic, because when you work with the universe the way that you're supposed to work with the universe, things just manifest and happen. And then, as Helen said, you step into flow. And then from about August of last year, it all just took off and it hasn't stopped. And I haven't really needed to push or anything as much as I did in the past. And so now I seek validation externally rarely, whereas prior to that, it was an everyday thing. Just seeking that validation and approval that what I'd created was relevant and good and valuable to people, and they wanted to engage in it more. So yeah, I agree with both of you on that.
I'm looking for the next project.
It's funny. I almost feel like when you are where you're supposed to be doing the work that you're doing, you just, the more you trust and the more you kind of just surrender to the process, and it's and in a way you're even disconnected from it, in the fact that you can be detached from the outcome, because you know.
Yeah, exactly.
be doing. So the detachment then means that there's no expectation, which means there's nothing to validate. You're just doing what you think you're doing, and you know that it's coming from your heart, which relates to our conversation last week, Scott. So, so what's your experience with validation, Scott?
I'm sitting back listening and enjoying it in a minute, because I'm in a growth period, and I've met Michael about a year ago now, Rose about the same, and you know, to hear both of you speak with conviction about your purpose is brilliant. But I can't help but think whether or not validation is a part of building confidence. It's a part of building that step and getting those hurdles to as human nature, that maybe it's from a young age when we were told, you know, good job, so we get things done quicker. I know with Oscar, one of the most important things I've got for him is validation. Now, validation for me can be a simple high five, smile, sitting in the car, driving along. He says something cool. I just stick my hand behind the seat, high five, done. Quick validation. His growth is exponential because I support that emotional need for validation. So the subconscious need for validation, I think it's part of our human biology. I think it's a part of us. We actually need that validation to give us the confidence in order to grow. Once you get to the point of, yeah, I've got this, then it's no longer a necessity. So one thing that I want to sort of, I've got quite a few notes here, sorry, but protecting what goes in, you know, because I think one of the things that I have found, and I can only talk from my experience, I heard a little bit in Rose then, was the input. When you're putting the input in and getting good input, you need less validation because you've already got good stuff coming in. I have found that noting who my people are in my life that I spend time with has made a big difference to whether or not I need validation externally, because I get it in my core group. So that's something for me. Jumping in the pool. Next time I jump in the pool, I'm going to yell out from the roof, "Look at me!" I'm so sorry.
I think everybody should try it.
Make sure you take video of that and post it in the Campfire Project.
Oh, there's enough damage Helen's got on me in the Campfire Project. He needs no more. So, if it's okay, Helen, because Helen's working, it's hers tonight, but I'm helping with StreamYard. Can I pop that statement up?
Sure, absolutely, do that. I was actually going to. Oh, hi, Omji. I'll just read that in a second. What I was going to ask as well is, while we're on that, social media. You know, I laugh when people say, you know, I'm going to put this post up. I don't care how many likes it gets. And then they're checking their page to see how many people have liked it for the next 15 minutes repeatedly like freaks. And it's kind of like, are you though? Are you really not bothered? And so on some level, I think the social media, there's a damage there that we've actually advanced to the level of validation we need into adulthood, past our 1 to 7. So even if maybe we did get validation when we were 1 to 7, maybe we had this great childhood, but then what about when we hit high school and everybody that we know around us has got 7,000 followers and we've got 100? What about if somebody else gets 1,000 likes and we get 10? You know, so what effect does that have? Social peer group validation, you know, that we don't feel as liked as the other person, and that is actually visible on a social media format. How do you think that's actually forming and changing our subconscious beliefs in this area? Anybody?
Social media is such a dangerous platform, especially for teenagers. I think, yeah, you're right about, you know, the 1,000 likes versus the 100 likes. So the one that's getting the 100 likes is thinking, well, you know, what's my life worth? You know, and my likes, you know, is my post any less, you know, worthy than the one that's getting 1,000 likes? You know, what am I doing wrong? What, you know, so they start to self-doubt themselves. They you know, and they may get depressed. They may get anxious. They may get lots of different other things. And the social media, as much as I love it, I mean, I wouldn't work without it, because I wouldn't get work without social media. But I think it's a dangerous tool for teenagers. I really do. And I really don't like this TikTok that's out now. I hated Snapchat, and I don't like TikTok at all. I think that's even more dangerous than Facebook or Instagram. Only because it's not regulated enough yet.
And it's not just teenagers, though, is it? You know, I mean,
no, a lot of adults I've seen them doing stuff on that.
I know that I'm kind of aware of what everybody's doing around me and all that kind of thing, and I see myself as fairly robust. So, but I have a lot of people I know that are sometimes they regularly shut down their accounts because they just got done with Facebook, and I know it's because something's hurt their feelings, you know, and that, you know, it's that kind of, you know, I'm putting this post up and a few people say a few kind of ordinary things and they feel ruined, you know.
Yes.
So that's that, I think, as well, is we've got this instant validation now, and this instant gratification and the instant kind of feel of it all. How is that affecting us as a society, and what can we expect that's going to be the fallout from that?
I think that's massive. I think that's massive. Instant gratification. Like nowadays with sex ed in the Netherlands, they do sex ed from the head up, and they talk about the emotions, because the physical gratification that is porn is what's rife amongst young teenagers. Everything's about gratification. I can't help but feel that validation is so important to the younger kids. I know myself with Oscar, and I refer to him a lot because it's my life, that he 100% gets validated for doing things right. He 100% is allowed to fail, and then once he's failed and I sit there and we work through the lessons, I then validate that session of how he's been able to fail. So I'm hoping, as time goes on, that when he is into the social media opportunities, and he's just started his first by interviewing me, God help us all, I'm truly hoping that he has enough validation from me that he knows it's safe to come to me to talk about these things and opportunities that he's failing in, because we're only after gratitude because what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Whereas if he's looking at it in a different aspect of what's the lesson here? What can I learn from this? How can I readjust this in order to get my message across? Because validation is, if you're not validated, you feel like you're not being heard. You're feeling like you're not enough, you're not doing enough. So building that self-trust, self-confidence for me is just, it's where we need to go.
And that goes back to Michael's comment, doesn't it? That, you know, then where does our responsibility lie as adults to actually build our own inner strength, that we're kind of okay whether we're validated or not. What's your thoughts on the social media thing, Michael?
I think all very valid points. I've actually been taking some notes here because I'd like to speak into some of this stuff. And I agree with what all of you have said. And I think that the instant gratification around social media comes from the validation that we seek as a result of comparison, when we compare ourselves to others on social media. So we compare ourselves to others on social media, and then what happens is that we will then put up a post, and then we'll compare our results with their results. And if we don't get as many likes, loves, comments, whatever it might be, then all of a sudden we step into self-esteem and self-confidence and self-worth issues. And then we seek validation even more so as a result of us feeling less than that person that we were comparing ourselves with. And so this is where, even though I agree with you, Scott, I agree with you that validation can lead to confidence, definitely, in kids and even in teenagers, and sometimes in adults too. I think in order for us to change those really deep-seated subconscious paradigms around validation and self-worth, I think, and I'm going to speak from my own experience and perspective here, in that my own process of education around this, and also my own process around self-empowerment, has really helped to take away that need for external validation. And that hasn't necessarily built up confidence. It's built up more of a self-empowerment, self-assuredness, and a inner strength that what somebody else thinks of me or what I do doesn't really matter, as long as I'm doing what I do from a loving intention, with a good heart, with purpose, and that I have meaning behind it as well. And so for me, that's enough validation. So that's just my perspective. But I do think I agree with all of you when we say that social media can be damaging, but it's only damaging when we start getting into comparison and when we start competing with others.
Yeah, but I think that this is the problem that we're having in a society, at a society level. There's this epidemic of insecurity that's almost fueled by social media, which is just such a devastating kind of state for us to be consistently moving more into. And and I agree, it can only ever really come from us,
Absolutely. Everything's from the inside out.
Everything is coming, and in that trust that you're okay where you're at, even in difficulty, and even through the bits that do feel awful and scary, and like you haven't got it going on, and your shit's not together, and then even more so, you need your own sense of self. So I totally agree.
Imagine if we could teach our kids this stuff. Imagine if we could teach our kids this stuff around self-empowerment, self-validation, self-confidence, self-esteem, right? And teach them that everything that they need is within them. And it's a matter of faith and trust and self-belief, that they build a level of confidence that they can then carry through life with them. And then they don't need external validation, and they don't need to compare themselves to others, because they have something unique from their zone of genius to offer the world. It's different from everybody else.
Absolutely.
It used to be me, comparisonitis was like a huge bugbear for me, and imposter syndrome. I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome days every now and again, but comparisonitis, no, not really, because I'm unique. What I do is unique. How I breathe or eat or sleep or whatever is unique to me, and no one else does it. And if no one else likes it, well, too bad for them.
I'm going to throw something out, and I'm really sorry, Rose. I can't help but think it's actually our responsibility to validate, and whether or not we've actually got a fear of validating each other in society these days, whether or not we've got a fear of telling people, you know what, I'm really proud of you for doing that. You've done a great job today. Good work. Because I know the difference that makes to people when you give them your heart and so put there for them and say, hey, that's great. That's awesome.
I suppose with that, Scott, is there a problem with that? Or is it the problem that the other person needs it in order to feel good? So it's not about the validation. It's about the person needing it to feel good about them. So you can still say to somebody, you totally rock my world, what an absolute rock star. And they go, oh, thanks very much. But they kind of felt okay about what they were doing anyway. You've just given them this beautiful bonus. So do you know what I mean? That there's quite a fairly strong line there between them kind of really needing you to tell them that to feel good versus them having you tell them that as a compliment on top of what they're already experiencing.
You never know what somebody's actually experiencing, so you never know when that point of tip is for them. So I would much rather take the opportunity and give them the validation for anything that I see as positive, because you never know when that's going to stick. I know myself, when I'm learning, the first few times I hear it, I've got no chance. It takes one click that goes bang. Oh, wow, actually I did that good. Someone told me I did that good. I can continue to do that. I can continue to make that better. I can, that's awesome. I know that now. Now I can learn something else. And like, I just hope we have a society that does validate people more often, that does give people more credit for what they do. You know, like one of the things for me that I adore is, you know, Michael helped me with my values. Michael hit me in the head with my values, and I'll never not thank him for that, because it changed my life. It changed my life. Him validating my values, he's holding me accountable and then challenging them. So I've said it to him often, thank you so much for that. I'm always going to validate him for that, because it makes me feel special. So when you validate other people, it also supports you. So yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a bit passionate right now, but I think
that's
it's
good.
important.
That's good, Scott. You've got some.
Sorry, Michael.
You've got some valid points. No, that's okay. You got some valid points, Scott. Valid points, and just on that, like you've thanked me a number of times for those conversations that we had, whenever that was, a year or so ago, which is great, and I appreciate that. But I think where Helen's going with this is that whilst I appreciate that, and I love the fact that I was able to help you with something that's important to you and that has been important to you, and that might make you feel good to know that you've appreciated me. From my perspective, I think that doesn't more deeply validate the work that I do. From my perspective, does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah.
You're in your
I love
purpose.
the fact that I've helped you. Pardon?
You're in your purpose. You found your groove.
Yep.
You're in your flow, right?
Yep.
It's not about
Yep.
it's not about that. At that point, you've got yours. You don't need it anymore. I did. I needed it.
And I needed it at one stage
for
too.
me. Yeah. So validating you for me actually helps me not need that validation. Which is, you know, if you don't feel validated, validate someone. You know, make them feel special, because it raises you. So,
I've got a comment here from Omji, who's a fabulous man who we know and love. He's also in the Campfire Project. And he was going to join us tonight, but unfortunately he had to work, so he was unable to come. But he writes, isn't there two types of validation? Self-belonging through being enough or approved, and self-belonging through being reflected in another. Don't people like to ask about whether to confirm their perception and subsequently feel better about their perception, just like the mask debate, or finding someone else to reflect our truths? Which is what you're saying there, Scott. You're saying there's this kind of the double reflection.
It's a double-edged sword. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
The reflection of you and yourself being reflected in another. And I suppose I get that, but I suppose the bit where I'm coming in and from is that it's whether your ability to function without behaviors that can be damaging to you, whether the validation from another person is needed in order to keep you from that space, you know. So are you low enough that without the validation from another person, you'll keep going into unhealthy behaviors for yourself in your life? So there's a line with it, isn't there? There's the
there definitely is.
And there is, yeah.
I mean, I couldn't imagine doing what I do only fueled by words of affirmation or validation from others. I can't imagine a worse existence than being motivated by external validation all the time, just to continue waking up in the morning and do what I do.
At what point do you tip? Because they're kids that need that validation. Kids thrive on that validation. They want to be looked at when they jump in the pool. And it's something that I think this is a great point, actually, because one of the things that we talk about down at the swimming pool at the moment is parents sitting there on their phones, right? They're involved in their phones. And if I'm needing to do stuff on my phone, I'll walk away from the pool. I go away from it so that I can go into the stuff I need to do. So then when I'm there with Oscar, I am present. I'm smiling, thumbs up, giving that. That's not there anymore. That validation is not there. So we've got these kids that are going through, hearing noises, going through, you know, their school sports, their opportunities, and they haven't got that validation. I think we're going to end up in a worse situation where we are. Suicide's going through the roof in teens. Suicide's going through men because they haven't got that validation, because they need that confidence. They need those 1,000 likes. I'm going to be very interested over time just to see what Oscar's like, because I'm had a discussion around computer use lately, because he'd like to do it because we're in lockdown. It's killing him. He's not being social. And I hate it. I just, because you can't feel, and I'm trying to teach him the emotions, and I validate everything he does. I do not let him have a conversation without me letting him know that it's safe to talk about it and safe to own it. And then validation doesn't just come in the way of, you did good, you did good. I see you, sub boner. I see you. That's all it has to be. To validate somebody, just let them know that you see them. So I think, look, Tom's going to tell on that one.
I think we can almost have two separate discussions, one around validation for children and how important that is, and another one entirely around adults. And because adults have the ability to, mostly, they have the ability to reason and self-regulate their emotions most of the time, and understand the importance of the inside-out approach. So I need to be okay with me before I try to externalize anything. Otherwise, the external manifestation of that could be unhealthy and destructive, and the outcomes and results that I get from myself and others could be unhelpful. Whereas when we talk to children, and this is to your point, Scott, when we're talking to children, I think it's a very different discussion. I think definitely because they don't have the ability yet to self-regulate their brains, our brains don't fully develop until we're 25. And so very young kids and teenagers need that. They need those constant words of affirmation, the approval, the validation, the yes, you're good enough. Yes, I have faith in you. Yes, you're doing a good job. I love you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They need all that stuff in order for them to, as you said, and you're quite rightly so, to build a sense of confidence, to build a sense of belonging, to build a sense of connection with themselves and others, and then to be able to move forth into the world with a sense of self-assuredness that they gained from the validation they received from their parents and influences in their life. I think when we get into adulthood, then it becomes more about self-responsibility, because then we can start to take more responsibility for our own emotional states.
I really appreciate that, Michael, and I really want to understand your perspective from running men's work and mine too, because we both run men's group, different things. The validation that's required inside men's group is huge. We need to validate men so that they can go and have these tough conversations with their wives, with their children. They need that validation. So it's interesting. Like, this topic can go on forever, because it's basically an infinite conversation, because it's going to continually change. But I think it's a very important conversation right now. But I'd love.
Sorry, Scott, Jessica's mentioned something that I think is relative to what you're talking about here, and I just wanted to mention her because we are running a bit short on time. So, but how do we balance validation for connection with the need for validation for self-esteem? And I think that's a really kind of succinct sentence in what we're really talking about here, is that the balance of what's healthy versus what's not healthy, and what is kind of like for the buoyancy of it and for the celebration of it. Like I was talking about with my boss before I go in, and for me, that was a celebration of what I'd achieved, but if I was going in there going, unless he tells me I feel good, I'm going to walk out of here feeling like I didn't do a good job. So it's kind of my responsibility is to say, I think I did really well here, and I'd like to celebrate that. And the validation then is a celebration of what you achieved, and it actually brings you to a new sharing of that. And so, but it's not coming from an insecure space.
And then the expression of that, and then the expression of that validation from the person who wants to validate another could be seen as more of an energy of gratitude as opposed to anything else. It's like, thank you for doing whatever it is that you did. You did a good job, made my life better, made my life easier, whatever. Thank you. Right? It's more of an expression of gratitude as opposed to validating somebody. This is my perspective, validating someone, because if you don't, they're going to end up being depressed and anxious and upset and have self-esteem issues, etc., etc. So I think there are two very different energies within this. Helen, I agree with that, Helen.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? This is a big topic, guys, right?
It really is. It really is.
There's so many levels. There's the different ages, the children's needs versus teenagers' needs versus our responsibility as adults as to what point do we stop asking for anything for anybody else and start saying, actually, I'll ask for what I want, and you either give it to me or you don't. But it's not necessary.
And either way, it's cool. It's cool.
It's kind of like another discussion, isn't it? And then on that, then there's the social media need for validation and the kind of societal, we've opened a can of worms here, people.
We're all, well, except for you, Scott, because you're still a baby, but the rest of us are about the same age. Okay, so what did we do with that social media? I didn't get my first mobile phone until, I don't know, the noughties, when they were compact enough that, remember the old Motorollas, but they were still quite big. They weren't in a suitcase any longer, but, they were still largish. You couldn't fold them up or do anything with them. But, what did we do before mobile phones and social media and, computers? And, we talked to each other. We used to have dinner around the table together. There was no adults on the phone, no children at the table on their phones or up in their rooms, chatting to their friends. And we've lost all of that. And we really have.
I challenge that though, Rose, because I think there was a lot of people who used to sit at tables and not speak. I know
Yeah, you're true. That's right.
What level you want to speak. There's kind of like the teenagers that are forced to sit at the dinner table and they poke at their food and they're just angry. And then, the adults get frustrated because these ungrateful kids who are sitting here and won't even talk to us. So I think it's very easy to kind of overlook.
I guess I was looking at the ideal situation. Yeah.
And this is the thing. This is the ideation of it always, that we go to and because that's what we really want, isn't it? To have this really deep connection and to think that maybe we had it or that we can have it. It all goes back to that, doesn't it? Yeah. You're dying to say something, Scott. I can see you.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? I can see it. Go, Scott. What do you want to say?
Thank you, Rose. I love the dinner time, and I am old enough to remember all of those things. And it wasn't until I moved into another family where that was their integral part of the day. They sat there, and I used to get killed because John would cook this beautiful meal and I'd put tomato sauce all over it because I didn't know what real food was.
Oh my God.
And he knew, look, when I first cooked him a meal, he put tomato sauce all over it. And I'm like, John, I just cooked it. He goes, wow, how does it feel? So it's, the validation and the conversations and, it's I think the most important thing going around that I have learnt myself with everything I've done, and I've had some ups and downs, amazings, not so amazing, is to talk, hear each other, validate our presence. I think it's the most important thing, and I learn every time I sit with people. I had this conversation with this gorgeous lady today, had breakfast with her, and I just needed a few bits and pieces to move forward, and I got them today. I was validated in the way I was feeling today, and my day was fantastic after that. Thank you, Helen.
Terribly rude then, but I just remembered we're on air.
Look, Alan's not watching.
He is actually.
All right, hang on a second. Yes, he is. And this topic for me is just awesome because whether it be subconscious need for it or whether or not it's, for me, just validate people no matter what.
Alan,
You know,
oh,
just so, but I just think it's really important, you know, like, and sometimes validation's not always about being positive. Sometimes it's just letting people sit in their own shit and feel it, own it, and then move forward. So there you go, Rose. I swore for you.
I wasn't going to swear. I was having visions, and I don't really want to explain what they are now because
I think we're just about up, people, but this kind of lends itself to maybe that they can be a revisit on and to maybe break this up into a couple of different sessions, and maybe anybody who's listening, whether there's any ideas that people have they'd like to put in the comments around where they'd like to see this go, if there's something specific they want to have pulled out of this particular conversation and an actual conversation happen on that, just on that one sentence. Because I really do think it's bigger than Ben-Hur, right? You know. So he's got Andrea. I agree, Michael. People can tell me that I've done something good and I just say thanks and kind of blow it off. And when I tell my kids I'm proud of them, they beam. So yeah, so that's the same thing.
And, you know, can I just add to that as well? There's also, thank you, Andrea. There's also a difference between, like, we can also gracefully accept their gratitude as well, as opposed to, and I don't want to, you know, blowing it off, I suppose, is a term, but we can also gracefully accept the gratitude. And that's what I choose to do. I gracefully accept gratitude when people say thank you to me. And I think that and validation are two very different things for me.
yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And because I will not accept anything without saying thank you. I don't care what it is. I think it's, you know, rude. It's only 2 words, but it just shows an appreciation or a gratitude for receiving something that was unexpected, or, you know, or someone's done you a kindness or whatever. I think those are the 2 words are quite lacking in our society at the moment, unfortunately. But that's another whole conversation. We can even
move into encouragement, you know, and you know, because encouragement is like a subset, if you like, of validation, kind of, and that's a big thing that's missing in our society and amongst people, human beings, is our ability to encourage others, and that's a form of validation as well. So, you know, and I think that's also something that's missing in our society that we could choose to embody more of and express more of.
Yeah, totally.
I think there's the other side of it too, positive and negative validation, because negative validation can sink you very quickly. So, but we're not focusing on that. We only focus on positive.
So many different topics, so many different rabbit holes we could go down.
I know. Already, I've made a list of about 10 this evening of things.
You got some homework, Scott?
Certainly now. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that we went into maybe like a fifth of what I had planned to ask you. It just, you know, it was just amazing. So thank you so much. I don't want to run over time. So just thank you, Scott, for providing this space and for handing the reins to me this evening. I do appreciate it.
Hey, I loved it. But
Rose, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Just before we go,
yeah, thanks, Michael. That was yeah, go for it.
Just before we go, I really want to say thank you to Helen for running tonight. I really appreciate that, and get used to seeing Helen around. She doesn't know this, but she's doing a heap more. But more importantly, next week I've got a huge conversation coming up. I've got 5 gorgeous women who are holding me, and we're going to talk about, does size matter? And we're talking about penis size. And we're going to go through that conversation, and we're going to talk about the pros, the cons, the ifs, the buts, and, you know, we're going to find out what's going on. So, guys, it's a conversation that most of us are going to be pretty nervous about, but I think it's one that needs to be had. It's one that we need to understand each other a bit better. So I look forward to that next week. I'm going to let Helen sign off. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, people. I hope you enjoyed this evening's chat. And yeah, like I say, please write in the comments about what you'd like to hear us talk about around this subject. That would be amazing. So yeah, pleasure. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Good night.